All right, hey guys, back with ideology type 2. So I told you this is the place where Marx, I feel like, lets us down a little bit because he's using ideology to mean two pretty different things. Type 1, ideas that are prevalent but that just sort of emerge naturally out of the social relations. We talked about a specifically limited idea of freedom or equality. But I also told you, Marx said, Marx has faith in people and he knows they're going to be able to understand that this just is not right. I mean, at its most basic level, exploitation, alienation, to Marx, it's just not right. It's not right to deprive people of a fulfilling life. And this is where, once those people start to go down that road, this is where type 2 of ideology comes in. Type 2 of, and these are examples. I will explain this in just a moment. This is the definition that you have to have. These are systems of ruling ideas that attempt, once again, to hide the contradictions at the heart of the capitalist system. So these are systems of ruling ideas, as in, these are things that elites use to kind of say, well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but, and then they use one of these three ways of trying to paper back over those contradictions that are at the heart of capitalism. Okay, first one, they create a subsystem of ideas. And for subsystem, what Marx very specifically means, because this is pretty general, what he means is religion. He used the idea of literature, but for us, I think we could think of pop culture there as well. Religion, literature, a philosophy, a legal system, some subsystem of ideas. And his most famous phrase, which maybe you've heard, is religion is the opiate of the masses. Now, by that, he didn't mean that religion was necessarily horrible. He meant that religion was being used in a way to paper over those contradictions. If you have as a tenet of your faith, it's been handed down to you by God that the meek will inherit the earth. What that tells you, according to Marx, what that tells you is that elites want you to accept the inevitability of the meek. There are going to be meek people. There are going to be people who are on the losing end, but it's all going to work out okay. Now, if you're a religious person, if you exempt that out of your particular religion and think about it in a more general way, what Marx is saying is that what that's going to do is get people who had been questioning the fact that their life was alienated and that they were exploited. And it's going to get them to, instead of questioning any further, say, but you know what? In the end, it's going to work out for me. Marx would say that is ideology type 2. It is a ruling elite type of idea that is designed to keep the poor or the exploited or the alienated from rising up against them. All right, so that's the first type, a subsystem of ideas. The second is explaining experiences away. So experiences that reveal the contradiction. So this is exploitation, this is alienation. You explain that away as an idiosyncratic issue. Well, yeah, that guy's alienated. You know why? Because he didn't try very hard in school. He's a high school dropout, and now he's got a job at a factory making those stupid card holders in banks. Of course he's alienated. He should have tried harder. It's an idiosyncratic problem. Now, that can be persuasive because we all know people who didn't try as hard as they could have in high school and who don't have a great life now. But that focus on the individual obscures the fact that there are a whole bunch of jobs that exist for people like that to fill. Those jobs are going to get filled by somebody. What it suggests is it's not that guy who ended up creating a situation where he was going to be alienated. There were alienating jobs and he just happened to fill one. So this is sort of the classic non-sociological imagination perspective on life. It's that individual's fault. Third one, resort to the idea of human nature. So in this case, the idea is, I mean, sometimes it will be an anthropological argument, not by anthropologists, I'm not trying to attack my department, an anthropological argument to say, well, since the beginning of time, there have been leaders and there have been followers. There's always been somebody at the top and somebody at the bottom. Not really, that's not necessarily true. I mean, the best research that we have is that hunter-gatherers are pretty egalitarian. But that doesn't mean that this isn't a persuasive argument to some people. And it's an argument that if you think back to the history that you know, well, yeah, before there were, capitalists, there were kings. Before there were kings, there were Roman emperors. As far back as we can remember, there's always been people at the top and people at the bottom. And so it is easy to make the argument that, well, then some system of inequality must be inevitable, therefore our system of inequality is acceptable. And what Marx would say is that's ridiculous. Like what he has proven up to this lecture is that our system of inequality, our system of exploitation and alienation is based on some very specific choices we made to organize our society around commodities rather than products, and then social relationships developing out of that. It's not human nature, it's human history. It's specific decisions that we made. And any of these is just an attempt to pull the wool back over the eyes of people who have been exploited and alienated and have said, I don't feel all that equal and I don't feel all that free. Well, but you'll inherit the earth eventually. Or, maybe you should have tried harder in high school. Or, well, yeah, you're on the losing end, but there's always people at the top and people at the bottom. Maybe if you try harder, you'll get to the top. And it's all what Marx would say is type 2 ideology. Ruling class ideas that attempt to re-hide those contradictions that we started to get sensitive to. All right, that is it for ideology. I will see you in the next one.